Number one, they just made up this position, okay? Like, they created this position. This isn't something that, say, the Senate has to consent to. This is a random kind of henchman of Donald Trump's, number one. Number two, the job of that particular role is not to incarcerate people. If this man wants to be the one that is going to enforce our laws, then maybe we should look for him to be the Attorney General of the United States, because seemingly it doesn't matter whether or not you're qualified to fulfill that position for Trump. It's just about whether or not you will arrest the people that he wants arrested. And this was one of those things that we tried to warn people about with Project 2025, which is this idea of we will go out and we will incarcerate people. This is the type of thing that they claim was happening to Trump and his friends, instead of people accepting the reality that Trump and his acolytes are actual criminals. You know, right now we have people that are deciding that they are going to criminalize those that are not doing what Trump wants them to do.
Last night, Donald Trump took to Truth Social to officially announce the tariff plan that he had talked about through the entirety of his campaign: tariffs on China, Mexico, and Canada. Tariffs that anyone with a basic understanding of economics knows really just act as a tax on working Americans, costing families a projected $4,000 to $5,000 a year as they raise the price of goods. And anyone who doesn't have that basic understanding of economics, anyone who's confused on what tariffs do, they're about to find out in the worst way possible. Unfortunately, and it's not just that, that is what is going to backfire on Donald Trump with this terrible plan that economists from the left to the right have said will hurt working Americans. But Donald Trump's own words, his own statements on tariffs are now being used against him, as a clip has resurfaced of Donald Trump really just exposing his own lie. And we are going to get into all of that. But before we do, if I could quickly ask you to leave like on this video, and if you haven't already and you enjoy our channel, to hit that subscribe button. It goes a long way, and it really means the world to me now. Before we get into how Donald Trump was exposed for the lie that he understands about tariffs, how they really just act as a tax on working Americans, I want to hear Jasmine Crockett call out this plan an incredible takedown right here.
Challenge people to go and Google what happened to Japan when they did that and how they had to reform.
Well, and I was going to ask you about Trump's threats of tariffs. We just heard Rosa Flores talk about this a few moments ago. Obviously, very stiff response coming from the president of Mexico. But in this hour and in the previous hour, we've talked about the economic impact that you might see from these tariffs. We had a fuel expert earlier on in the program saying you could have higher gas prices if these tariffs on Canada go through. If Rosa Flores was saying in the previous hour, if you have tariffs on Mexico, and those goods coming in from Mexico, you could see the price of avocados, for example, go up. A lot of agricultural products come in from Mexico. Your thoughts on what the economic impact might be? And I guess the other question is, if there are so many folks out there worried about high prices at the grocery store and so on, what might these tariffs do in the long run?
I think this is a conversation that we needed to have more in-depthly prior to the election, to be perfectly honest, because I feel like a lot of people are now understanding how tariffs work, but I feel like we must not have fleshed this out really well to make sure that people understand that, number one, like your laptop that is sitting here, guess what? It's not all made in one specific country. The screen may come from one country. The chips may come from another country. The keys may come from another country. And as I've traveled the world and talked to different American chambers around the world, we've talked about what it would take to try to get some of our businesses maybe to help out in some of our friendlier countries. And we've had to talk to the heads of states and the directors of finance and talk to them about their tariffs. Because here's the deal. If you start to say, well, you know what, those keys that don't get made in the United States, they're going to cost more. Well, guess what? The laptop is going up. So this is what we're going to see across the board. But as you
Democrats try to warn voters about this before the election.
We did.
Kamala Harris called it a tax on the middle class and so on.
It is.
But it didn't work out for her in the end.
It didn't resonate, and I think it is because tariffs isn't something that we talk about every single day. And so it's like, well, wait a minute. You know, if you don't understand why your food is more expensive, then you may not necessarily be inclined to be listening to us have a conversation about tariffs. But this is the bread and butter, literally, of what is going to raise prices. And as we've just talked about, or you talked about, listen, we've got record high travel. Right now, we know that, it may not feel the greatest this right now when we want prices to be lower, but we at least have the money to travel right now. We at least have the money to make sure that we're going to have Thanksgiving. And I can't say the same is going to happen next year if he goes through with these tariffs.
Congresswoman Crockett, just so spot on, these tariffs are just taxes on working Americans who will bear the brunt of Donald Trump's trade wars. And we've already seen officials in Canada, Mexico, and China respond to Donald Trump saying they're going to hit him right back, and that all falls on us. And Donald Trump knows this, or at least he did know it. At one point, it seems like now he has totally convinced himself that it is China or Mexico or Canada who pays the tariff in the same way that Mexico was going to pay for the wall. Yeah, that never happened, Donald, but a clip from 2012 shows Donald Trump saying what we know to be true, that this is just some scheme that he's come up with. It's a messaging campaign, and he doesn't actually believe what he's saying.
Somebody said, well, what would you do? What can you do? So easy. I drop a 25% tax on China. And you know, I said to somebody that is really the messenger. The messenger is important. I could have one man say, we're going to tax you 25%. And I could say another, listen, your mother, we're going to tax you 25%. Now, you said the same exact thing. You said the same exact thing, but it's a different message.
It's really weird to see how coherent he kind of sounds. So not to say that Trump sounded smart there, but you can tell the speech patterns are completely different from how Donald Trump is now. Well, of course, 12 years is a long time, but the cognitive decline couldn't be more clear. But what else is clear in that clip is that Trump understands what tariffs are. It's a tax. It's a tax on us, and he knows as well that it's the message that matters. Now, I don't like to give Donald Trump credit, but clearly he has convinced a majority of Americans that tariffs work when we know they don't, and he pushes these lies, but they've worked somewhat, but not really. Because if you dig deeper into the polling, Americans know that this is going to backfire, and it's really going to hurt Donald Trump when it starts to happen, when he takes office. Just check out some of this polling right here. Washington Monthly Politics editor Bill Scheer pointed out a remarkable set of questions and answers to CBS News' latest polling on President-elect Donald Trump's transition over the weekend. Scheer posted an image from the poll's crosstabs and wrote, "Good luck, America." In the image he posted were 3 questions from the PO, the first of which asked respondents to weigh in on what Trump's top priority should be as he takes office. At 79% respondents ranked to lower prices of goods and services as what they would like to see. Trump's top priority. The second question then asked, do you favor or oppose the U.S. placing new tariffs on goods imported from other countries? 52% said favor, while 48% said oppose. The third question in the image asked, do you think new tariffs on goods from other countries would generally make the prices of things you buy? 59% of respondents said higher. Well, only 18% said lower. CBS reported on the results, simply writing, on another economic front, Trump voters overwhelmingly favor the idea of tariffs. Most of them don't believe that they will make prices higher. For the third, who believes tariffs will raise prices but somehow support them. Anyway, this is presumably a cost they're willing to bear for the public. Overall opposition to tariffs goes hand in and with the belief they'll lead to higher prices. It is clear that voters are refused, but kind of understand that tariffs will make prices higher, but they won't be confused when they get the sticker shock that will come along with the Donald Trump presidency. If this tariff plan actually does play out, if we see another trade war, the same type of trade war we saw with China in 2019, which was devastating. I remember conversation of higher cost of Christmas presents, but somehow we didn't remember that. But it'll be incredibly apparent if this plan does play out, that Donald Trump knew he was lying the whole time. And what will be clear are the numbers. The numbers of cost will have to pay. But this is just a part of a larger plan for Donald Trump to consolidate as much power as possible, taking any ability away from the legislature to impose really anything in terms of policy. And it's something Rachel Maddow outlined in a great clip right here.
We are watching the efforts to consolidate power. We are watching for signs of autocratic breakthrough, trying to entrench themselves in power so they can't be removed. This is just the way these things go. This is how strong men rule. These are the things that they are trying. That said, so far, it's not clear that their efforts are going all that great. The fact that they just want these things doesn't mean that they get them. The fact that they're trying these things doesn't mean that they'll succeed. I mean, we've already seen terrible nominees like Matt Gaetz being laughed off of Capitol Hill and having to have his nomination withdrawn. We're seeing Senate Republicans not yet caving and not yet agreeing to shut themselves down so Trump can have his nominees installed with no confirmation hearings. The press turning out to be, yes, weak-kneed and lily-livered, as you might fear, in some quarters, but also defiant and professional and aggressive and creative in other quarters. The American Free Press, thus far, for example, has been doing a great job detailing the astonishing conflicts of interest and self-dealing and deep incompetence and lack of qualification, the salacious and even allegedly criminal past dealings of the freak show lineup that Trump has announced as his nominees for high office. And we'll get to some of those this hour. So his intentions for who he wants to install and for what he wants to do and how he wants to consolidate power so the American government is essentially just the will of one man, those are just his intentions. And it's worth being clear that those are his intentions. It's worth reporting on it, following it, being very clear-eyed about the fact that that's what he's trying to do. But just because those are his intentions doesn't mean those things are an inescapable fate for us as a country. Politics still works. Gravity still applies. The rules of nature still work, right? Each of these things they're trying is likely to be a fight and a test. And it's not just in Washington. It's everywhere there is a push against democracy. Everywhere there is a push against small d democracy, we are seeing that there is a push for it, too.
I don't like to be one of the people who suggests that Trump is always playing some 4D chess, that he's thinking at a level that no one can understand. He has this master plan. I don't think he's smart enough to do that. I think he's dim that he's not smart enough to do that. But I think he understands the pretty clear concept of taking power, and it's what he's always wanted to do. He's doing what his cabinet, he wants them to be completely subservient to them. Doesn't matter if you have experience. The only experience you have is in sucking up to Trump, and he wants the same thing from Congress for them to cede more power, cede the power of the purse, cede the power to levy huge tariffs. That's what Donald Trump's plan is, and you have to push back against and show how devastating it will be, or else we'll have to show how devastating it will be when it's actually affecting people's pockets. And I hope we don't have to get there, but when we do, we will be talking about it every single day on the show. And if you want to support that, as always, you can hit that subscribe button. You can leave a like on this video. And if you stuck around at the end, you can drop a blue heart in the comments. Until next time, I'll see you soon.